thing and they're doing well. Oh my god, this is just too loud. They are so resourceful. असं वाटतं अजून जोश आला याच्यामध्ये. आणि ह्याचा कसा क्या एवढा आहे ना की मी 2 वर्ड्समध्ये बोलू फक्त. विच इज सो ऑफुल. Adolescent girls, let's talk about adolescent. It's so distracting and irritating. What's up you guys, Aditi? Welcome back to our channel. This video is in continuation with the self-concept video I made 2 weeks ago. Today we are going to look at self-esteem, which is one of the most important aspect or core characteristic of self-concept. And if you can hear the crow cawing, if you can actually just shoo him away, please do it for me because wo meri sunta nahi hai. So self-esteem is the personal evaluation of ourselves, the associated feelings of worth. And just like self-concept, we also think of self-esteem as this single entity, but that is not true. Self-esteem is actually a cluster of 4 main types. First is the physical attractiveness, second is physical abilities, third is cognitive abilities, and fourth is social relationships. So we can have high self-esteem in one area. So for example, somebody who is a sports person who would have high self-esteem in his physical abilities, whereas he may not have so many friends and a social life, and hence he may have a low self-esteem in the social area of his life. So this self-esteem is quite complex and it does fluctuate depending on our experiences. For example, as a person in school, like a school student, you may have a lot of friends, so you may have a high self-esteem in social relationships. As you go to college, maybe you lose touch with your friends, some move away, some they graduate somewhere else or whatever, and you don't have that inner group circle kind of a thing, and you couldn't like make a lot of friends in college, so maybe your social life is not as happening as it was in school, so your self-esteem in your social relationships would go down. So depending on our experiences, our self-esteem does fluctuate. But there is also this thing called as the global self-esteem, okay? So the overall self-esteem, and that depends on the area in our life that we consider to be the most important. So for example, if you value how you look, you diet, you go to the gym, you keep your body maintained, you do a lot of skincare because you think that beauty and outer appearance matters more, your global self-esteem will be highly influenced by the physical attractiveness. Now let's talk about all the things that do influence our self-esteem. So the first point is childhood experiences and parenting. So someone who has a high self-esteem, we can say that they have been brought up by parents who are really supportive, who were expressive and affectionate, and they established firm but reasonable rules. But individuals who tend to have low self-esteem are usually brought up by parents who are overly permissive, overly strict, or inconsistent. Next reason is gender. So girls, like adolescent girls, tend to have lower self-esteem as compared to adolescent boys. One reason is that they tend to have bodily image issues at times. Also, they also want to have a nice social life and a good group of friends. At the same time, they also want to achieve and do really well in their academics. So all of this together make them have a lower self-esteem. Now, I'm not saying that adolescent boys don't have any of these issues. They do, but I'm just generalizing things here, okay? So don't come at me in the comments. But adolescent boys tend to be a little chill and relaxed. If you are in college, like in BSc or BA, you would actually see, I see that in my batchmates who are 18 years old. Like girls tend to answer more in class and be alert and attentive, whereas guys not so much. So I'm just like I said, I'm generalizing, so all are not going to be the same. So that's one reason why girls tend to have a lower self-esteem. If we talk about boys, adolescent boys, then they have their own issues and their own vulnerabilities. They have this societal standards that they have to achieve and they have to maintain. So according to the society, a boy or a man is supposed to be fearless and strong and independent and confident. And when adolescent boys don't make into the sports team, or maybe they get rejected by the girl that they really like, they feel that they are miserable and they are not meeting the standards that has been put by the society. So this is how the self-esteem is kind of affected in adolescent boys as well. Another reason that affects our self-esteem is success and failure. So earlier, psychologists thought that more amount or more successes in your past will increase your self-esteem, and any kind of failures that you may have is going to decrease the self-esteem. So that's the reason why it was said that you are supposed to encourage your child and say that, oh, you are so intelligent, you are so smart because you did the sum correctly, or you got so much marks in an exam and in an assignment. And that praising and those compliments would ultimately lead to high self-esteem, because the child will start thinking that, oh, I'm intelligent, and that's how he's going to start scoring more and also gain self-esteem, like his self-esteem will increase. But later they start understanding that that is not really the right way to do it. Actually, instead of complimenting students on getting good grades, they should be complimented, they should be encouraged and complimented for the efforts that they take to score marks or to do a particular sum or to do an assignment. And that would actually increase their self-esteem, because they are doing something. You compliment them and you make them feel good about their efforts that they're putting, and that would make them put more efforts and they will get good grades, and that's how their self-esteem will increase. Also, another thing is that it's not just about how well we do, but it's also about who we compare ourselves with. So for example, if I scored 95%, and if my best friend or a person whom I look up to or something like that, I scored 98, I may not have a good self-esteem after that, because I'll think that, oh, I didn't do that well. But if somebody else whom you're comparing yourself with got 92, you're going to feel good about yourself. So whom we compare ourselves with also matters. Another reason is media, okay? Not just social media, but media like the news, television, radio, in Fiji, the girls who are overweight started to look at themselves and their body shape negatively ever since television was introduced in Fiji, because they would see TV stars and actresses being very thin and slim and promoting that body figure as the ideal body standards for women. And they also would see in movies and TV shows where overweight people were ridiculed and considered silly and stupid. We all know these high school type movies where they do show that. So that's how, because they were overweight, they started thinking of themselves negatively because they were overweight, and that was affecting their self-esteem. Socioeconomic status also influences our self-esteem. So we know someone from in college or in school or maybe at workplace, neighbors, we know somebody who is well off. They have the newest phone and they have amazing books, maybe in school, or they have an amazing car, they live in the bungalow, they also have a farmhouse and whatever. We tend to feel a little in front of them, and as they are more resourceful, that's what I'm going to call them, resourceful, they tend to have a higher self-esteem because they believe that they're doing well in life because they are wealthy and they have a lot of money, so they tend to have a higher self-esteem in general. How can we forget culture? Culture definitely affects our self-esteem. So there are two kinds of cultures or societies. One is individualistic society and another one is collectivistic society. So we Indians have a collectivistic society. Any Asian cultures are actually collectivistic, whereas Western, like US, Europe, they tend to have an individualistic society or individualistic culture. So People who belong to individualistic cultures, their self-esteem depends on their own achievements and their personal goals and whether they achieve it or not. Whereas in collectivistic society, that is not the case. It is about the objectives of the family and you taking care of the family and doing things for the family and all of that. So if you do that and you provide for the family, then your self-esteem tends to be high. After culture, let's come to race and ethnicity, because that does impact our self-esteem. So we have seen that nowadays, we can say that it has lessened, the prejudicial treatment and discrimination has lessened, so the self-esteem is not affected as much. But earlier studies suggest that the racial prejudice and the discrimination. But earlier studies have shown that minority groups that were discriminated against, and that discrimination would make them feel disliked and rejected, and that kind of incorporated in their self-concept, and hence ultimately leading to lower self-esteem. But the recent studies have suggested that this is not the case anymore. It paints a totally different picture. If you come to adolescents, like African American adolescents tend to have little difference in the levels of their self-esteem from the whites. One reason is that they tend to do well in their preferences and the things that they are good at. So if they are excelling in something, they tend to enhance their self-esteem because of their excellence. Second reason is that they tend to have a strong knit community, a close knit community. So they have these social movements in their own African American community that kind of bolsters racial pride, and this support and this sense of racial identity kind of enhances their self-esteem in African Americans and also in Hispanics. Another reason is self-protective mechanism. So minority groups, they tend to attribute their negative feedback and personal failures to this discrimination or prejudicial treatment that they tend to get against their whole group, instead of accepting their own personal flaws and failures. So this coping mechanism kind of protects them and protects their self-esteem from being harmed, but in the long run they do have some kind of a psychological impact on their self-esteem, their self-concept as well. We cannot just take race and ethnicity into consideration while understanding someone's self-esteem. We also have to take a combination of factors. So there have been psychologists who took two factors, race and gender, together, and they coined the term ethgender. So in this one study, they found that Hispanic men and African American men tend to have the highest self-esteem, and Native American women and Asian American women tend to have the lowest self-esteem. And that is it for today's video. I hope you learned a little bit about self-esteem, and I hope it helps you in your studies. Next Friday, we will finish off the other 3 or at least 2 parts of the core characteristics of self-concept. Till then, like, subscribe, and you can watch the other videos that I have on this topic. And I'll see you next Friday with another psychology video.